Hi, welcome back to Lockbox Lunatics. Hopefully, you got your fill of turkey yesterday. I'm Chad Kamp here in Chandler, Arizona, with my trusty cohort, Steve Lambert, out of Washington. There, how was your Thanksgiving?
Dude, it's amazing. We spent time in Arizona for Thanksgiving, actually. We snuck down to your neck of the woods, which is kind of fun, and so that's cool. It's good, man.
Yeah,
Little
was there
family
any
time.
coincidence that I left as soon as you got here?
I know. I come down there and you leave, and I'm like, dude, come on, what happened? But that's
So,
okay. It's all right. I understand. Last time I saw you, I didn't wear deodorant. It was a little scary.
well,
I remembered this time. I remembered. But look at our festive lights.
oh yes, we are in the Christmas holiday spirit. I'm actually here in Florida, enjoying some of the. Okay, when I say enjoying, understand that my daughters are enjoying some of the festivities at Disney World.
I
So,
like it. I like it. You
yeah.
know, it's funny to me because you leave one sunny place to go to another sunny place. You're a smart man, a very smart man.
Well, I have to do something intelligent once a year, right? That's always my goal. And I put it off until what, November 28th, but I still have a month to spare, right? So I'm
You
not
might
that
you
big of
might
a,
be able to pull off two this year. You never
I
know.
might. I might.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, hey,
Yeah.
so we have kind of a fun subject today. You know, there's a lot. People are talking about these 50-year mortgages, rate buy downs, and all that. We see a lot of this, right? We see a lot of clients coming to us, and they're all excited about rate buy downs with builders. It's pretty common with builders, right? And you actually alerted me to an article that was came up last week in Inman, and they were talking about kind of rate buy downs, new home construction, and things like that. And you rolled that out at your sales meeting, right? And you talked about your agents a little bit about it. Why don't you tell us why did you bring that out into your sales meeting and why and then let's talk about the importance of these and why this is important to know about these rate buy downs, especially in your market and in my market, because we're growing rapidly, you're growing rapidly. We see
Right.
a lot of new homes, and we have national builders here. We have D.R. Horton, we have Pulte here in town, all the usual big names, right? And they're offering a lot of incentives. And sometimes those are good and sometimes they're not, right? So kind
Right.
of explain to me what you did with your team at your meeting today talking about those and well, just really why did you bring it to the forefront? What are you kind of seeing right now?
Well, from this article, it alerted me to, a possible trend of certain homes being underwater in the coming future, right?
Yeah.
So from the 22 to 24 market, our market has softened quite a bit. Prices are starting to adjust. And what I found interesting in this article is when it comes to the value of the new build. So the prices, today's resale prices are not that of, 2 years ago, right?
Right.
And so what happens is you've got folks that get into a home, and instead of the builder adjusting the sales price of their home, they're going to either offer a buy down, a permanent buy down, or a 3-1 buy down, a 2-1 buy down. And effectively, what those buy downs do is, if it's permanent, your interest rate is going to stay at a fixed rate through the life of the loan. Well,
Yeah.
if it's a 3-1 buy down or 2-1 buy down, there's going to be price adjustments every year, and individuals' interest or their mortgage payments are going to adjust accordingly to whatever that new rate is going to be, right? And so a lot of times agents put their buyers into these programs, or worst case, they went in without a buyer, right? Or a buyer's agent. They went in and talked to the builder, and the builder talked up how awesome these buy downs are. Hey, for your first year, your payment's going to be down here. Your second year, your payment's going to be here. Well, when that buy down period ends, a lot of folks are going to be in sticker shock, right? Of where their payment's going to land. So it's extremely important. One of the takeaways I got was it's extremely important for us as agents to convey to our buyers the importance of having an agent to be able to sit down and have a conversation with you or with the buyer to tell them the pros and the cons of this. And the first thing you want to do from a buyer's agent's perspective is sit with your client down and say, hey, look, whenever this expires, this buy down period expires, this is going to be your payment. Okay.
Yeah.
Is your income going to increase to where you can afford that? Or are you going to be a pinch right now this year with that payment? If you can afford that payment today, great. Just know that it's going to adjust up to that in a few years. Okay.
Yeah. Well, even when you think about too, like the equity of the home, right? When we look at prices where they were 2022, for instance, just in our market here, our average home price was nearly 500,000, right? And
Right.
now that average home price here in closing out 2025 is sitting in that 450, 460 price point. So that's a 40, $50,000 drop in where they were from 22 at their peak. And so when you see a lot of these new construction homes being sold, right, in 2022, late 2022, early 2023, where they're offering these buy downs, but what are they not giving that buyer, like you said, especially if they're not represented, right? They're not dropping the acquisition price, right? The asking price.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
prices have softened.
Yeah, and if memory serves me right, in the article, it made a statement somewhere along the lines that most of the larger builders, the homes that are selling at are 6% higher rate than the average market. Well, what does that mean when you go to resale? Well, you overpurchased for that home, right?
Mm.
So you're going to possibly be in a position that you're underwater, depending on how much money that you brought to the table to close on that home. And so I think for individuals that have bought a home under the premise, okay, I can go ahead and refinance in 2 to 3 years, or I'm going to have a life event where I'm going to need to move in the next, 2 to 3, 4, 5 years. They're going to have a difficult time selling and recapturing their loan, right?
Right.
They're
Yeah.
going to be underwater and in a short sale position effectively.
Well, and let's be clear on this too. These rate buy downs are not a bad thing because we're going to
No,
talk about where the difference is in that market, right? Because we're specifically calling out those new home buys and builds right now, right? Because when you look at those prices stayed here while the resale market adjusted naturally to the market, right? But what those buy downs did is allowed builders to say, hey, we're giving you this great deal on the house. Even though the price is up here, you're going to be able to afford the same as a resale here. But like you said, it didn't actually reflect that, right? It doesn't show that. And so 3, 4 years down the road, those buyers that bought up here on a new construction, in essence, they kind of overpaid, right? And those resale homes, that buy down rate was effective because those homes have, they were either at the market or they've moved with the market or they've stayed a little bit more level where these were kind of getting purchased up here and maybe these were right here. So there was a bigger gap, right? And so those new home construction, they're sensing or they're feeling that kind of that pinch where they're quote unquote underwater. And when we're saying underwater, we're not mean they're not going broke or anything, but what we're saying is if they have to sell their house today, they're selling their house for less than what they totally owe on it, which means they
right,
can't get out,
right,
and that's a scary place to be, right? And when you think about it, the different types of loans that are out there, right? When you look at who's really underwater the most or what areas are mostly under the water. I mean, there's a lot of them, and it's typically we talk about kind of we call it skin in the game, right? Like how much are you
right,
putting down to be in a home or anything like that. And when you look at the types of loans that are most negative right now by loan types, you have VA and FHA kind of leading the pack by a massive margin, right? Because those are zero down, right? So you add zero down on top of a rate buy down, and it's kind of a recipe for if you're not unless you're staying in the house for a long time, right? It's a
right,
it's a
right,
recipe to be upside down pretty quick. So like you said, you got to kind of think about, and life changes pretty quickly, kind of unexpectedly sometimes. You might have to sell in 2 or 3 years, and you didn't mean to be upside down. You thought you were getting a good deal, and you're going to be in the house for 10 years, and it's interesting, right? And I love that you pointed out if they went straight to the builder or if they had buyer representation. Why is buyer representation so important when you're dealing with new construction? Because a lot of people think, well, I'm dealing with the builder. They're building me a house. They're giving me everything I want. And they're throwing all these things at me, right?
Yeah. And so first I want to clarify something. You said that FHA and VA were zero down, and what you were referencing was VA loans are typically one
Correct.
0% down. FHA is going to be a little bit lower down payment as well. But
Yeah.
back to the original position as to why, you want an agent, on your side when you walk into a new build. The first question I ask my clients is, who is that who is that salesperson working for?
Right.
Right. And so, you got to give them pause and let them think about, hey, look, they're working for the builder. They have quotas. They need to move so many properties every month. They need to be able to open up different phases. I know down here, we've had some builders that have had major layoffs, right?
Yeah,
Because the market's not moving as quick as they would like, and so they're kind of scaling back a little bit. But so the biggest thing is you want somebody there on your side to ensure. Now, I'm not saying that all new sales agents are
right,
not going to have these conversations by any stretch of the imagination. I just want to throw that disclaimer out there. But realistically, you've got those they're there to protect and to promote that product and to sell that product. Period.
right. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And so as a buyer's agent, when we walk in there, well, we need to be able to educate our buyers to ensure they know exactly what they're getting into. And if at times we understand where their financial position is and where their goals are, if we need to have that conversation, hey, you need to have walkaway power, right? Because we need to
yeah,
slow down, settle down, walk away because this is not a good deal for you. And
right.
especially whenever you see builders that are laying off, their team, well, their incentives are going to be a little bit different that we'll be able to negotiate than what you're going to negotiate on the front end. Because when you walk in, the first thing to do is here's all the incentives we give you. This is what we're offering you. We're already giving you X amount. Well, a lot of
Yeah,
times an agent's able to, there are times an agent are able to get in there and negotiate additional considerations, whether it's the purchase price, whether it's some upgrades, anything along that nature. Whenever you're in a buyer's market, you're going to be more prone to be able to do that. Whenever you're in a seller's market, basically you walk into a new build and you get what you get, or you don't throw a fit, right?
yeah, pretty much, right? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
exactly. Well, and you think about it too, the reason they kept those prices elevated and offered these buy downs is because it was baked into that price, right? I mean, it's not free. It's not coming out of they're not losing that money, if you will, right? That's why these new homes came in at kind of elevated prices, right? Like, and that's why you're seeing these people be underwater. But absolutely, and it's no slam against the builders representatives or agents, like you said,
No.
they're doing the best they can to sell the product and promote the builder as they should. That's what their fiduciary responsibility lies with that client, right? Just like when we're a buyer's agent, our fiduciary responsibility lies with our client, the buyer. So we're there to represent their interests above all else, right? And that's why you have agents on both sides. And I think it's interesting because a lot of times people think this kind of this falsehood of, well, if I just go straight to the listing agent, I'm going to get a better deal. Hmm. You know, in theory, is theoretically, could that be correct? True, possibly, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. It
Yeah.
depends on a lot of things. Generally, it means the agent on the other side is just keeping all the commission instead of potentially, saying, hey, the buyer having to come in and negotiate and ask for some of their commission. The listing agent's probably going to say, hey, since I'm representing them, why don't you give me a little bit more, right? Kind of thing.
Right.
They're getting generally a bigger payday. Um, and they're not always operating in the best interest of everybody, right? And so, like you said, when you go to that builder, they're going to be pushing that product on you and they're going to be pushing the products that the lenders give them spiffs for. There's all these affiliated business disclosures or business agreements that you're probably signing in that big, massive paperwork. And there's all kinds of things going on down the line to kind of benefit everybody involved in it. Whereas if you have an agent representing you on the buy side, they're able to articulate that to you and help you make a good decision, a good financial decision, because maybe it's not the buy down, maybe it's not the extra packages, maybe it's, hey, we want price. And if they're not willing to go on price, then actually give me, like you said, give me upgraded countertops, give me upgraded flooring options, things that will bring value down the road when they go to sell, right? Things that other buyers are looking for as well.
Right, right. Yeah, and it's, I recently had a buyer that ended up walking into a new build without us, and he did so strategically.
Hmm.
And whenever we discussed what they gave him for not taking us along, it was minimal. And when I
Yeah.
say minimal, I'm talking maybe a 0.5% or less.
Wow.
And this is in a market where, and it was basically they only received what they were offering everybody out there on the sheet, right?
Yeah.
And so they got less than a 0.5%. Whereas if we would have went in there, our compensation, more than likely we'd have been able to negotiate that into the seller to contribute. Okay.
Yep.
9 times out of 10, that can happen.
Yeah.
And not only that is I would have known to go ahead and pursue additional items because I know the market. I know that those homes aren't selling. I know specifically that builder has laid off some of their customer relations teams, right? And you
Yeah.
don't lay off customer relations people
No.
unless you don't have product for that customer rep to go through, that warranty rep to go through and go over the warranties and things, right? Because you're not moving product.
So
And
you, in essence, by representing them, not only would they have had somebody on their side fighting for them and looking out for their best interests, right? Number one, so you're on their side. Number two,
Yep.
the payment, you would have been able to negotiate a portion of, if not all of your pay coming from that seller anyways. Which does not impact, and people think that it does not impact the fiduciary responsibility of you. Even if it's coming from the seller, that doesn't change how we negotiate.
Right.
And you would have been able, more than likely, with all that thrown in there, to get them far better deal than just 0.5%, right? You would have been able
Right.
to say, hey, I'm going to be able to get you maybe 1.5% off the price, plus we're going to get you maybe some upgrades. Like you could have negotiated a very aggressive package in a way that the builder could have swallowed, could have said, hey, I'm going to swallow it and go for it. We're gonna eat this one or do whatever, but I got to move houses, right? I got to move
Right.
product, right?
Right.
And you would have been able to represent them that way. Whereas, like you said, an unrepresented buyer is maybe a little bit trepidatious or naive to the process at times, thinking they're getting, boy, I really got a screaming deal. And we're like, boy, you left so much on the table, right? And so,
Yeah.
and it was kind of short-sighted,
Yeah. And realistically, we don't have a crystal ball. I can't sit there and say definitively that I would have been able to negotiate more than what they did. Okay.
Right.
I can go in with data and I
Yes.
can go in with research and I can get a feel for what we may or may not be able to get away with. And realistically, it would have been a conversation I had with the sales rep. Send this up to management. This is what we're asking for. Will you allow, will they accept these terms? Right.
Yeah.
And most of the times when the buyer walks in, they don't realize that sales agent has a supervisor to answer to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that,
It's a
and
different hierarchy, right? Yeah.
yeah, and that they can go to that supervisor and say, "Hey, look, I've got an able and willing buyer. I know we're slow this month. I could get these guys on a contract under these terms. Are you willing to accept it?"
Right.
Now, there again, what happens when the first number gets thrown out, Steve? 9 times out of 10.
9 times out of 10. Yeah. Well, it shouldn't be taken, but it does.
Right, right. It shouldn't be taken, but sometimes it does. Let's
Right.
just say that it doesn't. They'll want to give something.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Big
More
time.
than likely,
Like
you know,
people forget about the business side of that builder. That builder sometimes is willing to sell almost at cost to keep his crew busy because his or her crew busy because they want to keep that development moving because they want to keep the bank funding the development, right? And they're waiting
right,
for the market to kind of improve a little bit. And during that time, they just need to keep selling things, right? So they're
right,
willing to kind of get to a pretty narrow profit margin to be able to just continue to say, hey, we're selling because that also looks good for them from a marketing perspective, right? Hey, people are buying
right,
houses in our neighborhood and they're not at the, Builder X down the street. They're not buying from them, but they're buying from us, Builder Y. We're doing a great job, right? We're getting people in homes, right? And
right.
so it helps them. There's a much bigger picture in play. And from a value perspective, I know you were saying, we can't guarantee it, and I understand that, but there's such strong data out there to
Oh
suggest.
yeah,
We look at like the listing side of it, for instance. We know how many times have you seen a for sale by owner? And this is no disrespect to for sale by owners, but they're either egregiously overpriced or or egregiously underpriced.
right,
So I've seen more often than not for sale by owners that I've worked with in the past or that I ended up listing, taking their listing over. They're like they couldn't sell, and I came in and raised the price of their home 40 or $50,000 to actually the market value, and we got them that more than covered what my value and fee was, at the end of the day, and they couldn't believe that we got it done quickly and for a higher price, right?
right,
And it just does go to reaffirm that people are looking for guidance in the process, right? It's kind of scary if you think about it. You're just going to buy a house from a for sale by owner because do either of you know the process or understand there's so many legal potential pitfalls that you come across because it's just the blind leading the blind. I hate to say that to a certain extent, but in many times, in many cases and scenarios, it is. And so it's similar with a builder, right? You've got somebody coming in and they're not, like I said, they're not always educated with the process. And this isn't by any stretch meant to beat up, like you said, I'm not trying to beat up builders here. I'm not trying to beat
No,
new
no.
construction, but it is a good idea for buyer beware. Just be aware of what your representation opportunities are and what's available to you and kind of what your rights are as a buyer with new construction. Sometimes too, I feel like they feel pressured if they do come in with their agent, like, oh gosh, like now I'm the bad guy, right? And it's like, no, you're not the bad guy in that. Builders expect you to have representation, and if you don't, they're happy to fill in for you. Trust me.
Right.
And it's gotten a little more aggressive. I don't know about your area, but in our area, if you have your client go in and they don't fill and they fill out their name and form, and your client doesn't tell you with certain builders here, like within 48 hours that you went and visited, even if I call on day three and say, hey, that was my client that went in there, they're going to say, that's our client now. If they buy from us, sorry, it's our client now.
Yeah. Well, here in Arizona, you have to be there on their first visit or have them pre-registered. So if a
Oh,
buyer goes in, signs in, starts walking through that, if they don't, first off, they don't have to work with us at all. They don't have to cooperate with us at all at that point. Okay. So you can be completely cut off. So I do say
wow.
this is I will tell my agents, look, there are some builders out there that want them to have that representation. They want to maintain their relationships with realtors because at the end of the day, when we hit a market like this, they rely on us. Okay.
Yeah.
And so there have been some occasions where you call the sales office or the sales agent and say, hey, look, that's my client. I told them not to go in there without telling me,
Yeah.
I either sent them information about it and they took it upon themselves because they had free time. Will you
Yeah.
cooperate with me? Right. And
Yeah.
sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Because realistically, the conversation goes at that point, okay, hey, look, yeah, they liked your product, but you know what? They didn't go into this builder over here. I'm going to take them over there. And you can bet I'm gonna find fault, right?
Yeah. I'm
Between
gonna
them.
look, I'm gonna look a little harder. Yeah.
Yeah. Now
Well,
there again, we can't put our interest ahead of the buyers, but realistically, if we're going through with that buyer and we're giving our honest opinion because we didn't go through that other home, we can certainly point out things that we love about or that prefer on this home. At the end of the day, the buyer's going to go with the home and the amenities and the flow and the neighborhood that they like.
right.
Though we can definitely introduce them to some other options.
Well, like you said, it's doing the right thing for the buyer.
Right.
We have a builder here in town that they've kind of been flopping a little bit lately. They had a pretty nice little run here for about, during when the during, pandemic and things were kind of cranking. They had a nice little run there in their neighborhood, but they refused to let you have agent representation.
Mm,
And their reputation prior to this was that they built a pretty cheap home, right? They didn't hold up real well. Okay, so I had a client. We've been looking at new construction, comparing different houses, and they said, "I really want to get in this neighborhood." And then we went in there, and they said, "I'm sorry, you buy from us directly. You're not allowed to have agent. We do not allow you to have agent representation." And I told them, I said, I would run so fast at that point because they're saying, we don't allow you to be represented by anybody. What are you hiding? Like, what are you hiding? Because their prices were market prices. They weren't like fire sale. It wasn't this
right.
such a screaming deal that they're like, yeah, we just cut out agents altogether. We have no commissions on anything, right? And I was like, your prices are in line with the market. So it was just very interesting to me. And I did have those clients ended up falling in love with one of the plans. And they're like, hey, Steve, love you to death and known you for years and all that, but we're going to buy from these guys. And like you said, as much as that was painful, if that was the decision that they came to, they felt was going to be the best for them and their family. So I was like quietly bowed out. And it was
Right.
frustrating because people don't see that side of real estate a lot where we do the work, right? I got
Right.
I didn't get paid for that. That was months of my time, a lot of showings, visiting new homes, walking lots, all that fun stuff to get paid, right?
Educating and guiding and directing and yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when they're trying to go to resale now, and the developer is pushing people in that neighborhood to now use their real estate company to resell products, right? So
Mhm.
it's very interesting situation, but and the homes haven't held up well. They called me and they've been in there it's been about 3.5, almost 4 years, about 3.5 years now. They've got all kinds of issues with the home. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'd love to help you, but I know nothing about your home at this point.
Right.
Outside
Right.
of the fact that I went and, you invited me over, you guys had a dinner party. I don't know anything about your home. And so I
Right.
don't know the ins and outs of it, but they're having a lot of issues with the home. And
Yeah.
it's
It's
kind
bad.
of, it's sad, right? Because I'm like, that made just perpetuated everything I thought about that builder saying, what are you trying to hide, really? Right. And so it was just
Right.
interesting. But I think the importance is for people to really understand, have your buyer representation, have somebody that's knowledgeable about the market, like you are and I am in our various neighborhoods and areas, to help guide you in that process because the builders aren't naive to it. They're selling 50, 100, 200 of these. They're doing this wash, rinse, and repeat all day long. They know these contracts inside and out. So you're kind of at a disadvantage if you don't have some type of representation. And it's not just because we're out here saying, "Hey, use us." We're realtors. It's not that. It's saying like, just make sure that you have your bases covered because it's a big financial decision. And we're seeing some people that are in these underwater situations because their representation either could have been a little bit better or it was non-existent.
Right. Yeah. At the end of the day, the important thing is ensure that you're being educated, make and ensure that whoever is giving that education, has your best interest at heart. And I understand sometimes that can be difficult, but
Yeah.
you've been in the business a while, I've been in the business a while, and I've built a reputation or have tried to build a reputation that's positive that I put clients first. And I know you have the same mindset. So, but
Yeah.
we're at the end of our time today. So we just want to
That
say,
went
hey,
fast.
it did. It did. So happy Black Friday. Hopefully no one's gonna get trampled today in any
Yeah,
type of
definitely.
mall settings. So stay safe. And there again, if you would like, share and comment. If there's anyone that you find that you think would find this podcast this conversation helpful, please forward to them. But like, comment, and share any ideas for future content. Drop it in the comment section. So you folks have a great day and we'll catch you next Friday.
Take care. Enjoy Florida, man.